What happens when two powerhouse women in Hollywood clash over creative integrity and the price of fame? The tension in Studio 6B was so thick you could cut it with a knife as Reilly, the fierce star of Yellowstone, sat across from Drew Barrymore on what was supposed to be a light-hearted promotional interview. But within minutes, what started as casual banter turned into one of the most explosive confrontations daytime television has ever witnessed. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me which celebrity interview moment shocked you the most. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single word of what's coming next. The morning started like any other at the Drew Barrymore show. Kelly had arrived early, her publicist trailing behind with the usual reminders about staying on message, promoting the new season, keeping things positive. The makeup team worked their magic while Kelly sipped her coffee, her mind clearly elsewhere. She had been doing press tours for years, but something felt different about this one. The questions had been getting more invasive, more personal, more focused on her private life than her craft. Drew bounced into the green tent area with her characteristic energy, all smiles and warmth. "Kelly, oh my gosh, I am such a huge fan. Yellowstone has completely taken over my Sunday nights. And can we talk about that last season finale? I literally screamed at my television." Kelly smiled politely, though those who knew her well might have noticed the slight tension around her eyes. "Thank you, Drew. That means a lot coming from you. Are you ready for this? I have some really fun questions planned. Nothing too serious, I promise. Just girl talk." Drew's enthusiasm was genuine, but there was something in her tone that made Kelly's publicist shift uncomfortably. As they walked onto the set, the studio audience erupted in applause. Drew waved energetically while Kelly offered a more reserved acknowledgement. The cameras rolled, the theme music played, and Drew launched into her opening with practiced ease. "Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have with me today one of the most talented actresses working right now. She's fierce, she's British, and she plays Beth Dutton on the hit series Yellowstone. Please give a warm welcome to Kelly Reilly." More applause as Kelly settled into the plush interview chair, crossing her legs and maintaining her composed demeanor. Drew leaned forward with that intimate style that had made her show so popular. "Kelly, first of all, you look absolutely stunning. That jacket is incredible on you. Now I have to ask because everyone wants to know. What's it like playing such an intense, complicated character like Beth?" "Thank you," Kelly replied, her British accent lending an air of sophistication to the casual setting. She's a force of nature. Really, she's someone who has been shaped by trauma, but refuses to let it define her weakness. She fights for what she believes in, even when it costs her everything. I think that resonates with a lot of people. She certainly does fight. And speaking of fighting, there have been some rumors about tension on set. Can you tell us what it's really like working with Kevin Costner and the rest of the cast? Kelly's smile remained in place, but something shifted in her posture. "The cast is wonderful. We're like a family, which is essential when you're telling stories about family. Kevin brings such gravitas to John Dutton, and working alongside him has been one of the highlights of my career." Drew nodded enthusiastically. "That's so beautiful. Family is everything, isn't it? And speaking of family, I know our viewers are dying to know about your personal life. You're so private, which I totally respect, but can you give us just a little peek behind the curtain? What's Kelly Reilly like when she's not being the badass Beth Dutton?" The question hung in the air for just a moment too long. Kelly's fingers tightened slightly on the arm of her chair. "I prefer to keep my private life private, Drew. I think the work should speak for itself." Of course. But you know, our audience feels like they know you through Beth. They're invested in you as a person. Surely you can share something. Are you dating anyone? Any wedding bells in the future?" Kelly's publicist, watching from the wings, took a small step forward. This wasn't what they had discussed. The questions were supposed to focus on the show, the craft of acting, maybe some light behind-the-scenes stories. Not Kelly's romantic life, which she had always kept fiercely protected. "I understand the curiosity," Kelly said, her voice remaining steady, but taking on a slightly cooler tone. "But I believe actors do their best work when they maintain some mystery. When audiences see me, I want them to see Beth Dutton, not tabloid headlines about my personal relationships." Drew laughed, but it sounded slightly forced. "Oh, come on. Mystery is great for the characters, but we're all friends here. The audience loves getting to know the real person behind the role. It makes them feel connected." "Connected to what exactly?" Kelly's question came out sharper than intended, and the studio fell into an uncomfortable silence for just a beat too long. Drew blinked, clearly not expecting pushback. Well, to you, to your journey, to your story. My story is my work, Kelly replied firmly. It's the roles I choose, the characters I bring to life. That's what I'm here to share with people. The tension was becoming palpable. Drew glanced quickly at her cards, then back at Kelly with a smile that was a bit too bright. Okay, I hear you. Let's talk about the work then. There's been some speculation about your contract negotiations for the next season of Yellowstone. Sources are saying there might be some drama behind the scenes with the network. Care to comment on that? Kelly's eyes flashed, and anyone paying close attention would have seen her jaw tighten slightly. Sources? What sources would those be, Drew? Oh, just industry talk. Nothing concrete. But our viewers are concerned about their favorite characters. They want to know if Beth will be back. Industry talk, Kelly repeated slowly. You mean gossip? Drew's smile wavered. I mean legitimate reporting from entertainment journalists who cover the industry. Entertainment journalist, Kelly said. And there was no mistaking the edge in her voice now. The same ones who make up stories about my personal life, the ones who turn contract negotiations, which are completely normal parts of this business, into manufactured drama for clicks and views. The studio audience had gone completely quiet. Even the camera operators seemed to sense that something was shifting in the room. Drew's producer was making subtle hand gestures from behind the cameras, but it was unclear whether they were telling her to push forward or pull back. Kelly, I think maybe we're getting a little off track here, Drew said, her voice taking on a slightly defensive tone. I'm just trying to give the audience what they want to hear. And what is it you think they want to hear exactly? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Drew shifted in her seat, her usual warmth replaced by something more guarded. They want to know the real you, Kelly. They want authenticity. They want to feel like they're connecting with someone genuine, not just a polished media persona. Kelly leaned back slightly, her eyes never leaving Drew's face. Authenticity. That's an interesting word coming from someone who built a career on carefully curated vulnerability. Tell me, Drew, when you share your personal struggles on this show, when you cry about your divorces or your childhood trauma, is that authenticity or is that performance? The studio went dead silent. Drew's smile disappeared entirely, and for the first time in the interview, she looked genuinely caught off guard. I share my experiences because I think it helps people feel less alone in their struggles. Or because it gets ratings, Kelly replied coolly. Because audiences love to watch someone break down to feel superior, to feel grateful that their lives aren't quite so messy. Don't mistake exploitation for connection. Drew's producer was now frantically gesturing from the wings. But both women seemed locked in their confrontation, oblivious to everything else in the room. Drew's cheeks had flushed slightly, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost its practiced television smoothness. That's really unfair. Kelly, I share my story because I've been through difficult things, and I know other people have too. It's called being human. Being human doesn't require performing your pain for strangers, Kelly shot back. And it certainly doesn't require demanding that other people do the same. You're not entitled to my personal life just because you've made yours public. I'm not demanding anything, Drew said, her voice rising slightly. I'm trying to have a conversation. This is a talk show, Kelly. People come on to talk about their work, about their craft, about the stories they're trying to tell through their art. Not about who they're sleeping with, or what designer they wore to a grocery store, or whether they're planning to have children. That's not conversation, Drew. That's gossip disguised as intimacy. The audience was completely transfixed now. This had gone far beyond an awkward interview moment. This was two successful women having a fundamental disagreement about fame, privacy, and authenticity. And neither was backing down. Drew took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain her composure. Look, I understand wanting privacy. I really do. But you chose to be in the public eye. You chose to be on a massively popular television show. With that comes certain expectations from the audience. Expectations, Kelly repeated. And there was something dangerous in her tone. So because I'm good at my job, because I chose to pursue acting as a career, I owe strangers access to my private thoughts and relationships. That's your argument. It's not about owing anyone anything, Drew said. But her voice lacked conviction. It's about giving people something real to hold on to in a world that can feel very disconnected. Kelly laughed, but there was no humor in it. Real? You want to know what's real, Drew? What's real is that I go to work every day and I pour everything I have into creating a character that people find compelling. What's real is that I study and I prepare and I collaborate with other artists to tell stories that matter. What's real is the craft itself, not the person doing it. But people want to know about the person, Drew insisted. They want to understand how you bring such depth to Beth Dutton. They want to know what experiences you draw from. They want to know because you've trained them to want to know, Kelly fired back. You've created this culture where an actor's personal life is considered fair game, where we're expected to sell our privacy along with our talent. And when someone like me refuses to play that game, suddenly I'm difficult or mysterious or not giving the audience what they deserve. Drew was clearly struggling now, caught between her instincts as a host and her personal feelings about the attack on her show's format. I think you're being a little unfair to my audience, Kelly. They're not vultures. They're people who care about the shows they watch and the actors they admire. Caring about the show and demanding access to my bedroom are two very different things, Kelly said sharply. And the fact that you can't see the difference is exactly the problem. Nobody's demanding access to your bedroom, Drew protested. But Kelly was already shaking her head. Aren't they? Asking about my dating life, my relationship status, whether I want children, how I maintain my figure, what I eat for breakfast. Those questions aren't about my work, Drew. They're about consuming me as a person. They're about turning my entire existence into content for other people's entertainment. The interview had completely derailed now. What was supposed to be a light promotional segment had become a philosophical battleground about fame and privacy in the modern entertainment industry. Drew's usual arsenal of charming deflections and warm redirections were useless here because Kelly wasn't playing by the established rules. I think you're being a little paranoid, Drew said. And the moment the words left her mouth, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kelly went very still. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but cutting. Paranoid because I want to maintain some boundaries between my public work and my private life. I'm paranoid. I didn't mean it like that, Drew said quickly, realizing she had made a mistake. I just meant that maybe you're overthinking this. People ask personal questions because they're interested, not because they have some sinister agenda. Not sinister, Kelly agreed. Just entitled. Just convinced that because they buy tickets to movies or subscribe to streaming services, they own pieces of the people who entertain them, and you enable it. Drew, shows like this enable it by treating personal information like currency that we're supposed to hand over in exchange for promotion. Drew was visibly flustered. Now, that's not. I don't think that's fair. I try to create a safe space where people can share what they're comfortable sharing. By asking the same invasive questions that every other host asks? By pushing when someone says no? By calling them paranoid when they set boundaries? Kelly's voice was getting sharper with each word. This doesn't feel very safe to me, Drew. The audience was completely silent now, watching this confrontation unfold with the same horrified fascination usually reserved for car accidents. Drew's producer had given up on subtle signals and was now making more obvious gestures. But both women were too locked in their battle to pay attention. I think we should maybe take a commercial break, Drew suggested weakly. No, Kelly said firmly. Let's finish this conversation. You wanted authenticity, right? You wanted the real me. Well, here I am, Drew. The real me thinks this entire format is toxic. The real me thinks that turning personal trauma into entertainment is grotesque. The real me believes that artists should be judged by their art, not by how willing they are to bleed publicly for ratings. Drew's mouth opened and closed a few times before she found her voice. If that's how you feel, then why did you agree to come on the show? It was the wrong question to ask, and Kelly's expression made it clear that Drew had just crossed a line there was no coming back from. Kelly's eyes flashed with something that made everyone in the studio hold their breath. When she spoke, her voice was deadly calm. I agreed to come on this show because my publicist assured me we would be discussing my work. Because I was told this would be a respectful conversation about acting and storytelling. Because I believed, foolishly it seems, that you might actually be interested in the craft rather than the gossip. Drew tried to recover, but the damage was done. Kelly, I am interested in your craft. That's why I asked about how you bring depth to Beth Dutton. No, you asked me to reveal my personal experiences so you could connect them to my character. You wanted me to turn my private pain into your content. There's a difference, Drew. And if you can't see it, that's on you, not me. The studio felt like a powder keg about to explode. Drew's hands were visibly shaking now as she gripped her interview cards. I think there's been a misunderstanding here. Has there? Kelly asked, and there was genuine curiosity in her voice now, as if she was examining Drew under a microscope. Because from where I'm sitting, this feels exactly like what I expected it to be. Another interview where the work takes a back seat to the person, where boundaries are treated as obstacles to overcome rather than limits to respect. That's not what this is, Drew protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Kelly leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Drew, what did you hope to accomplish by asking about my dating life? What insight into my acting process did you think that would provide your audience? Drew opened her mouth, then closed it. The question hung there unanswered because they both knew there was no good answer. The personal questions had nothing to do with Kelly's work and everything to do with feeding the public's appetite for celebrity intimacy. I see, Kelly said softly. You can't answer because there is no answer. You asked because it's what you always ask, because it's the formula. Work for 5 minutes, personal life for 20, maybe throw in some tears if you're lucky. That's not fair, Drew said. But even she seemed to realize how weak it sounded. Fair. Kelly's voice rose for the first time in the entire interview. You want to talk about fair? Fair would be respecting when someone says no. Fair would be focusing on the work they came here to promote. Fair would be recognizing that actors are human beings, not products to be consumed. The audience was transfixed, watching this real-time destruction of everything they thought they knew about celebrity interviews. This wasn't scripted drama or manufactured controversy. This was genuine conflict between two women with fundamentally different views of what fame should cost. Drew made one last attempt to salvage the situation. Kelly, I think you're really misreading my intentions here. I genuinely care about you as a person, not just as an actress. Kelly stood up slowly, and the movement was so unexpected that several camera operators had to quickly adjust their shots. You don't know me as a person, Drew. You know me as a celebrity. You know the version of me that exists for public consumption, and that's all you're entitled to know. Kelly, please sit down, Drew said, panic creeping into her voice as she realized what was happening. We can talk about this. We just did talk about it, Kelly replied calmly. And we disagree. Fundamentally, completely disagree. You think that being famous means owing strangers access to your personal life? I think it means doing excellent work in exchange for money. Those two philosophies are incompatible. Drew was on her feet now, too, desperately trying to maintain control of her own show. I think if we just take a step back, we can find some common ground here. Common ground, Kelly repeated. And she actually smiled for the first time since the interview began, though it wasn't a warm smile. The common ground is that we both work in entertainment. The difference is that I want to entertain through my performances, and you want to entertain through my personal life. I'm not interested in being that kind of entertainment. Drew's studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras humming. Kelly reached for her purse, a simple gesture that somehow felt monumental in the charged atmosphere of the room. Where are you going? Drew asked, though the answer was obvious to everyone watching. I'm leaving, Kelly said simply. This conversation is over. Kelly, you can't just walk off my show, Drew said, and there was real desperation in her voice now. We have a contract. We have obligations. Kelly paused, turning back to face Drew one last time. Obligations like the obligation. To answer invasive questions about my personal life. Like the obligation to perform vulnerability for strangers. Like the obligation to treat my privacy as a commodity to be traded for publicity. Like the obligation to finish what you started. Drew shot back, anger finally breaking through her polished exterior. Like the obligation to be professional. Professional, Kelly repeated and laughed. Is it professional to ignore someone's clearly stated boundaries? Is it professional to push for personal information when someone has explicitly said they don't want to share it? Is it professional to call someone paranoid for wanting privacy? Drew's face flushed red. I apologized for that. You did, Kelly agreed. But you didn't mean it. And more importantly, you didn't stop. You kept pushing, kept probing, kept trying to find a way in. That's not professional, Drew. That's predatory. The word hit the studio like a physical blow. Drew stepped back as if she'd been slapped. You can't say that. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Kelly asked, and her voice was genuinely curious. Now, what do you call it when someone repeatedly ignores another person's stated boundaries? When they keep pushing for information that person doesn't want to give. When they make that person feel uncomfortable and then blame them for being difficult. Drew was silent. And in that silence, Kelly gathered her things. Her movements were calm, deliberate, utterly controlled. She wasn't storming off in a rage. She was simply leaving because the conversation had reached its natural conclusion. "This is a mistake, Kelly," Drew said quietly. "People are going to see this, and they're going to think you're difficult to work with." Kelly paused at the edge of the set and looked back one final time. "Let them think that. I'd rather be considered difficult than be someone who sells their soul for approval from strangers. I'd rather be thought of as mysterious than be completely consumed by public opinion. And I'd rather walk away with my dignity intact than stay and compromise everything I believe in for the sake of a television appearance." With that, Reilly walked off the Drew Barrymore show, leaving behind a stunned audience, a shaken host, and footage of one of the most brutally honest confrontations about fame and privacy ever captured on live television. What did you think of this explosive confrontation between Reilly and Drew Barrymore? Do you think Kelly was right to protect her privacy, or should celebrities be more open with their fans? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible celebrity moments that you won't see anywhere else.